But let's bring in some perspective here. Joining me are Harsh V. Pant, Strategic Affairs expert, as well as Major General Sanjay, who's a defense expert, both of them on the broadcast with me. Thank you so much for speaking to us here on Mirror Now. Harsh Pant, if I can come to you first, because in the latest development here, Russia has gone ahead and said it's hoping for support from India at the UNSC going ahead. And that is sort of putting India in an extremely difficult situation, rather more difficult than it was before.
Well, yes, indeed. And Russia has a history of using India's abstentions as deeming support for Russian position, which actually it is not. India had abstained in the past, and India had taken a position which was quite distinct from the way Russia is used to portraying it. And I think that serves Russian interests, that they often portray Indian positions in light of, as if India is supporting them. Of course, if you recall yesterday's talk that Indian Prime Minister had with the Russian President, Indian Prime Minister actually was quite categorical, saying that Russia should stop the invasion and should go back to the diplomatic table. So in a way, India has moved the needle on its position by stating explicitly to none other than Mr. Putin himself that India sees, this invasion as something that Russia needs to stop and seize. So I think, of course, Russians are hoping that India would abstain again, which it is likely that India would, and then Russians would portray it as a support for themselves. But clearly, Indian position of carefully negotiating between its ties with Russia and the West is coming under a lot of strain and will come under a lot of strain in the coming years, especially as West ratchets up the sanctions and Indian position comes under greater scrutiny, especially in the US Congress, which may be debating CATSA very soon, and where S-400 deal might also come into the picture. So I think there is a lot that India will have to do over the next few days and weeks to maintain the momentum on both sides and to make sure that the negative externalities coming out of this crisis do not hurt Indian interests.
Yes, absolutely. It is a fine, balance as far as India is concerned. But Major General Sanjay, if I can come to you here in terms of what's happening on ground right now in Ukraine, Russia still, insisting that it is a special military operation. But from the information that we have, from what we know of what's happening on ground, can you give us a sense of where things stand in terms of, even the capital is being sort of, lot is happening around the capital of Ukraine as well?
In fact, Avni, Russia has been saying that it is a special operation. But yes, if you say that, what is so special? It is all-out war.
Yes,
absolutely. In fact, they have gone in from 9 directions and they have attacked the Ukraine from north, east, west, and from the seaside. From all the directions, they have attacked Ukraine. And they have done the bombardment, they destroyed the airfield, they destroyed the military installations, and then the tanks have moved in, they are moving and encircling the places, they're attacking, they're firing, they're hand-to-hand, the very close encounters are also going on, the destruction of military assets of Ukraine, and some aircrafts and tanks of the Russia have also been deported. So it is nothing less than full-scale war. And the only thing here, what Russian President Putin has been saying, and probably what I feel is that first they declared the independence of Donbass region. That is where they try to judge the reaction of West, NATO and America. And then they realized it is nothing more than few sanctions. And Russia was always prepared for those sanctions. They have been living under sanctions since 2014, and there's some more sanctions would be there. So they couldn't care less. And now with the support of China, as you see that China has eased the trade restriction on Russia. So, and with some countries, they have trade in the ruble also. So they know that they will have problems. It is not that they will not have problems, but they should be able to overcome. And Putin was ready to pay the price. And now the attack is from the ground, from the sea, from the air, from all directions. The attack is going on, and the casualties are there. And probably aim is to remove the present government, put their own government, and they have already declared the independence of Donbass region. Today, Russian foreign minister met the foreign ministers of Luhansk and Donbass region. I mean, it also brings out that at the same time, they are showing the world that those are no more part of the Ukraine. And in the Kiev, they may put their own government, remove the present structure, destroy the present system of governance, and put their own people so that nobody can think of joining NATO later on. Avni.
Yes, absolutely. And Major General, just on that point, on what we are looking at or whatever the possible scenarios or outcomes here could be going forward, because now that obviously Ukraine is no match for Russia in terms of, the defense and the troops and the operations as well. US has said that no troops are going to be sent. So it is now, it boils down to just what's going to happen between the two countries. Where does that leave Ukraine? What are the possible outcomes now going forward?
In fact, outcome is very clear. In fact, Ukraine was giving all the messages and all the support that will come, and the West was thinking that sanctions will deter Russia. But probably Russia had made it a very clear, this is a red line, I'm not going to stop it. And President Putin had made not once, but many times that this is not acceptable, that Ukraine joining NATO countries, NATO group. So now when they have gone, I think Ukraine has no choice. They are left to fight on their own. In fact, Zelensky had said, okay, I feel totally left out. In fact, he has spoken to almost all the countries of NATO, except the verbal support at present. Nothing else can come. In fact, the kind of blockade which is there, no more arms and no more support can be there. But the fact is, in the earlier also, they gave them some anti-tank weapon, anti-aircraft weapon, and then financial support. But that is not enough to stop the Russian might, which is in many more. And today, if you see that, Avni, they have a total control on the skies. The way Russian aircrafts are flying, because they have destroyed all these anti-aircraft systems which were given to them. They have destroyed the airfields from where whatever limited aircraft, fighter aircrafts, about 69, 70 they had. Some of them would have been destroyed and other cannot take off. There's no resistance. So it is a totally free hand. The outcome is very clear. It is only thing I feel is Russia wanted this to be very fast and swift operation. It should get over as fast as possible. They change the system of the government, change the government, and they have already declared the independence of Donbass region. And after that, they fall back, because probably I feel, my personal opinion, it may be wrong, that Russia may not like to remain involved in the West Ukraine and in the rest of the Ukraine, because they do not command that kind of support in the local population. They would like, they would not like to repeat the Afghanistan and other places where, and it may become very expensive for them to hold on to this area. They will keep their troops for some time till the government they put in place stabilizes and gain control. Avni.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And in fact, Harsh Pant, just taking that point forward in terms of the precedent that this sets, whatever Russia does, to whatever extent it decides to go ahead, even a minimal, move by Russia, if that happens and if that continues, the precedent that this then sets going ahead, say, given that NATO, UN, one more example of how they were just not effective in such a scenario.
Yes, Avni, I think very serious implications for what is happening. I think at times what we find in India, the justifications that are being given on behalf of Russia are quite extraordinary. Russia may have legitimate grievances, but what Russia is doing will have some very significant implications for the global order, for the way we work out interstate relations, and for what the lessons that are being learned in different parts of the world. What happens in Europe will not remain in Europe. It will spread out. Countries that are revisionist in nature are watching this very carefully. They are learning their lessons. They know now that at times the international community just is a paper tiger. if United Nations was not working, one could have understood. But an institution like NATO has been found to be wanting. The whole entire will of the European community has been found to be wanting. And I think that is something that others are watching and learning. So I think the implications for Indo-Pacific, for example, can be quite critical. I think Taiwan is watching very, very carefully, will be watching very carefully as to what is happening. Yes. Of course, there are differences here. But, one should not underestimate when things change, when global order changes. And this is one inflection point in the global order today that we are witnessing, that here is a country that can independently take an entire continent to war without even, you used to talk of First World War, Second World War, where two sides mobilized and where there was so much of signaling. Here, a bigger country has basically gobbled up a smaller country, and the world is basically looking askance. There is no reaction, and I think it sets a huge precedent in international relations, and it will have significant implications for the way we look at international institutions, like you were mentioning, UN and NATO. And I think their credibility has, of course, gone down, but also the credibility of countries that used to talk about upholding rules-based order. It doesn't really mean much when you talk of rules-based order in one part of the world, whereas rules are broken in another part of the world.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if this situation itself wasn't bad enough, the precedent this sets, the outcome of all of this is perhaps going to be worse in terms of the world order and the way things work. But we're getting in some breaking news at this point. Let's go across. Well, Russia says that it is ready to talk if the Ukraine army lays down arms. That is what the foreign minister has said. In fact, this is the latest here. If Ukraine's military surrendered, he said that the invading forces were looking to free the country from supposed oppression. That's the latest news that's coming in. And let me just take that to Major General here as well. Major General, your understanding, or how do you read this particular statement here? Because in any case, Ukraine is no military match for Russia. So would you read too much into this, or is it just another comment that should be not be taken at face value?
No, in fact, I'll take 30 seconds on what Mr. Harsha had said.
Yes.
That NATO used to be a big threat. People used to feel NATO. This country is part of NATO. So that credibility goes. I fully endorse that view of Mr. Harsha. Now, coming to the statement of the foreign minister of Russia, it has a significance at this stage because this thing keeps on happening. They keep on giving the chance to the other side to surrender, so that the operation can be faster, the cost of the operation can be lowered. And these kinds of messages, if you see this, right from day one, they said in the Donbass region, you please surrender, lay down your weapons, you are free to go. And then subsequently also the messages were going, WhatsApp messages were going to the Ukrainian troops to lay down arms. So these are the messages which probably try to weaken the resolve of the other side to fight and make your own operation less costly, cheaper. Avni.
Yes, and that, of course, we'll have to wait and see how this really, unfolds in terms of whether these talks happen and how they happen. But Major General, just on that point that you mentioned of, NATO, and just taking forward what Harsh Pant as well said, your opinion on the repercussions of this and how, the credibility that is being lost here, both by UN and NATO, and what that will do going forward. And like Harsh Pant was pointing out, Taiwan is also closely watching, and this could sort of lead to a domino effect.
Yes, in fact, UN had lost their credibility for serious interference long time back. They were, some organization where they will criticize, they will try to take action. But however, NATO used to be a power to reckon with. If you've seen 70s and 80s, even if any country, they will say that is part of the NATO, let's not take chance with that country. The whole NATO, all the countries will come and fight with us. So now, the next comes in China. China, you are absolutely right, Avni. They are also looking at Taiwan. How the world is going to react to because right from day one, they've been saying that Taiwan is part and parcel of the China. It is not an independent country. They're not accepting it. So if they go there, how the world is going to react? Will they react in the similar manner? like they have done in Afghanistan, now they have done in Ukraine. So they, I mean, the American credibility of the America in particular and credibility of the NATO, their reliability as a friend in need. When I need you, then like the Zelensky has said, when I look back, there's nobody with me. I'm alone to fight the battle. So, I mean, that will have a tremendous effect on world order, especially if you look at the present scenario, when the China and Russia are trying to challenge the hegemony or the dominance of America. So this will have a serious effect, and the effect on the popularity and of the Biden also, Joe Biden. His credibility will go down in his own country, the way it is going down.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Harshpant, you know, obviously at this point in time, just to go back to India's stand and the balance that India has to play at this point in time, what are the options now for India? Because everything does come with its sets of pros and cons. How is India going to weigh out what to do going ahead?
See, I think India has, a lot of issues to consider, both, in the short to medium term, as well as the long-term strategic implications of what is happening. First of all, of course, as I think, we have seen, for example, in the governmental response, the priority being to ensure that Indian citizens are safe in Ukraine, that they are evacuated safely, that they are in safe positions. And I think that is why the reach out by the talk between Indian Prime Minister and Russian President was important last night, because it gave a sense that India had put its priorities very, very clearly to the Russians, that this is important, that nothing should happen to them, and that we are hoping that they will be evacuated safely. And then you have the economic factor, that as you look around the world, global markets are tumbling, oil prices are going up, global economy was just about beginning to recover, and here we are back to war fighting, where global economic dynamic is becoming more and more dire. And if this escalation continues, we might be well in for a slump, and India is one of the few countries that have been doing well. So I think India's priorities will be, how do you make sure that the crisis de-escalates quickly? But I think over the long term, the question that India strategically will have to answer is what happens to Indian foreign policy priorities if the world is getting divided into these two blocks, if Russians and the Chinese are coming so close together that it is almost like an alliance, it's a partnership, that a few years back used to be said a loose partnership. Today it's a tight-knit embrace. What do you do with that? How do you reckon the fact that in the short term, India needs both Russia and the West to manage China? But in the long term, as Russians are coming closer to China, how do you frame a foreign policy response that allows you to break the two countries apart? It's very, very difficult for India to do. And I think the trend lines are that Russians and Chinese will go together, that they will fight, that they will stand against the West alliance. And India will have to make some very, very difficult choices that India has avoided so far, because it is not in its interest to make those choices. But I think time is coming where increasingly India will be pushed into making certain choices, and it will have to do some very deft diplomatic thinking and very creative diplomatic thinking to come up with the right response.
Yes, absolutely. And just before I wind up this discussion, this comment has just come in from Zelensky, once again accusing European leaders of inaction. He says, and I'm quoting here, like World War II, you said never again, but here it is again, and you're not doing enough to respond. That end of quote. That is the quote coming in from Zelensky, and what he has said right now, over the fact that there is not enough help being given. But on that note, I'd like to thank both of you for joining us and giving us your perspective on all of this. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition. We'll go into a quick break and come back with lots more.